make a sports poster composition with 2 player images. Let's make a new Photoshop document, 1080 by 1350, 72 pixels per inch, vertical format. Let's start with a blue background. We're gonna be doing Eric Taylor of the Carolina Flyers. First thing, let's drag in our player cutouts. We have 1 and 2. So it's pretty common when you have 2 player cutouts, one of them is a lot bigger and then one of them is a lot smaller. So we're gonna follow that formula here. I would normally choose to center both of these, but see how they're both looking to the right? In my mind, it kind of makes sense to position them on the left and then maybe have some kind of featured text on the right alongside these images. So I'm gonna move them over a little bit towards the left. And one thing you could do to separate out these 2 images a little further, aside from the size difference, is to add a gradient map to this back one. And I'm gonna blend it into the background by using this map with the background color, and I'm gonna use white as the other color. I'm gonna clip this to the bigger of the 2 cutouts. And just to fine tune it a little bit more, I'm gonna drag this blue in. Actually, let's use the Carolina gray, so it's a little bit dimmer. Okay, and now let's add shadows to our front cutout, so it looks like he is standing in the scene. So let's just position this shadow on the left foot. And then we'll do the same with the right. And I'm not going to be super precise here because we just want to focus on the composition, but just to give you a general sense of how it can look in the end. We'll bring the opacity of both those shadows a little bit down. I think this one should be stretched a little bit more. Okay, now let's fade out this bottom edge of the big cutout. We're gonna do that by putting on a mask and selecting our black brush and a very soft brush. We're gonna paint out this part. So it's kind of like emerging from the blue. And let's make a folder just so we don't get lost. Smaller cutout here, big cutout. Okay, I'm gonna move the big cutout down a little bit, and maybe we can have his heart frame his own head. So let's do that just by sizing him and moving him down a little bit. There we go, he loves himself. Now let's add a texture to the background. I don't like dealing with totally flat backgrounds, so let's bring in this wall texture. And I'm gonna set the blend mode of this to multiply. And you can see it just kind of gives it a subtle wall vibe to the blue. Also, if you don't like having just one flat color, one thing you can do is use gradients to make some parts lighter and some parts darker. So if you go down to the function and go to gradient overlay on this blue background layer, we have right here a white to black gradient map. You can get there from the basics, and it starts as black to white, but you can switch these back and forth. And I have it set to soft light right now as the blend mode, but you can see the effect. It kind of gives a vignette to the outer parts of the image as long as you have it here on radial, and you can change the angle to see the effects there as well. I think it just makes it a little bit more interesting. I made it a little too dark, so I'm gonna tone down the effect a little bit just by messing with the opacity. And the other thing is you can see on this cutout, the sun is hitting him from this right side of the image. So if we want to kind of reflect that in the design, another thing you can do is make a new layer and take a big white brush and just paint white over on this side of the image and then set the blend mode to overlay. That's going to brighten up that part of the image. So now we have this like bright blue fading down to dark blue in addition to a lighter center. We'll also add some coloring to the smaller cutout. We'll go down and put a gradient map clipped to the small cutout, and we'll pick the same colors as the big one. But this time we're going to tone down the effect to, I don't know, 30%-ish. That just kind of gives him a little bit more blue, and so maybe fits into the background a bit more. You can also move this down and add a black to make sure we're getting those darker shadows. And then using this blue slider, you can see it affects the brightness and how much gray or how much black is coming in to the player cutout. Let's add text now. So I'm gonna make a new layer for text. We're gonna type out Eric Taylor, Carolina Flyers. Let's pick a new font for Carolina Flyers. I'm a big Montserrat guy. Let's go with bold, but let's make it smaller, size 20. And now let's space it out some more. And I'm gonna shrink this text down a little bit. And now we're gonna drag in the Flyers logo to help finish things off. And you can size this as you see fit. You know, you can fill the space more or less. I think I typically like smaller fonts and smaller logos. And we can move this text and logo group to below the wall texture. So some of that texture is affecting that as well. I try to avoid having pure white in my designs generally. So if I can put a texture over it, I choose to do that more often than not. The last thing we could do, and we did this with our single player image cutout, is give Eric Taylor some grass to stand on. We have the stadium image that I've used before, and this time I'm going to set the blend mode to luminosity. So it's going to blend it in with all that blue in the background. Now I'm going to give it a black mask by holding Option and clicking on the mask tool. And then I'm going to brush back in white just some subtle grass here at the bottom of the image. And I'm going to bring the opacity down. And I don't know if we want the stadium image showing so much, but you might. Let's just keep it as grass for now. Bring it down a little more. So just some subtle texture at the bottom of the image really brings everything together just a little bit more. And we'll leave things there for now. Again, that's just one way that you can arrange two players. You might also have like a full image rather than just a cutout in the background. You could put that image in a shape, like a square or a circle, even the team logo at times. There's a lot of different ways to arrange multiple images, but I'm sure we'll be going over more examples as this channel continues to grow.